All right, welcome back, everybody, to another Razzball Fantasy Basketball podcast. We have the whole gang here again as draft season is kicking off. Drafts are starting everywhere. It's my favorite time of year. I'm always feel a little bummed out after my drafts, so luckily I have like 8 or 9 of them this season. Thanks to the Razzball Commentator Leagues, which if you haven't joined, go to basketball.razzball.com and click on the news story for the Razzball Commenter Leagues. It'll show you how to get to the spreadsheet and join those leagues. There's still spots left in some of them, and you can take on some of the writers from Razzball and show us that we have no idea what we're talking about. So today, like I said, we have the full crew. We got Sun.
Good evening, everybody. It's always a pleasure to be in your esteemed company.
Always a pleasure to have you, Son. We also have Viz from the Northeast.
Yes, good to be back with everybody again as per usual. And like you said, now that week 1 of football is done, it's time to move on to hockey and basketball drafts and get focused on that for sure.
That's right. If your favorite guy's already gotten hurt, then you can move on to basketball. And if he hasn't, don't worry. It'll probably happen within the next 2 weeks. And then you can move on to basketball. And then from over across the pond, bright and early or late at night, however you want to look at it, we got Craig.
Hi, yeah. Definitely getting used to the climatising to the 3 a.m. starts on a Tuesday. But did you say you got 10 drafts there going on, Brent, this year?
I think I got to the point where Yahoo told me I couldn't join any other leagues.
That's crazy.
I suppose if you throw enough darts, some of them are going to hit, aren't they?
Yeah. Honestly, pretty consistent with who I like this season. I have tried to vary sort of my early round guys, but I tend to end up with the same guys from mid-draft on. A lot of the same kind of sleeper guys, I guess. But I have tried to vary based on draft position. I've had the first pick. I've had the last pick. So we'll see. Hopefully I'll get a couple middle round picks so I can see how those go. But yeah, so that's one of the things we'll be talking about today is just breaking down what's going on in drafts up to this point to help you get ready for your drafts. But we're going to start with some news stories that have come out since last week. The first one and the biggest one that probably caught people's eye is that Devin Booker is having hand surgery and he's expected to be out 6 weeks. So, Son, is this going to affect where you draft Devin Booker?
No, I don't think so. It's a little concerning, but everything that I'm reading, they're saying, it's a minor thing, and he's out, 6 weeks, so that should be right around the start of the season. So, he may miss a few games, but until I hear something more, I guess more negative, I'll probably leave him where he is.
Piggyback on the back of that. I don't have too many concerns at the moment either. A few games in the sort of grand scheme of 82 over the course of the season isn't the biggest loss. Does it linger? Will it affect his performances early in the season? If you're drafting Devin Booker, you're probably expecting it to, get 43% field goal percentage on, quite a few shots, 20 a game or something. So you're not kind of drafting him for a boost in that area anyway. But it's expected he's going to have increased, ball handling opportunities with a couple of rookie point guards on the roster. So yeah, I don't think that there's any kind of real panic for me, I guess, at this point. And I think he's still a viable 3rd, 4th round target for those that, still believe and want to get that shooting guard early.
Yeah, their backcourt is such a mess. Like, if he does miss the first couple games, we think Troy Daniels is going to start. Do you think they slide Warren down? I could see Warren being a good streamer for the first week or so because, honestly, he might get the most shots up on this team, unless it's 8. But whoever plays point guard, whether it's a Kobo, Melton, they're not going to take a lot of shots. Ryan Anderson isn't either. Maybe Josh Jackson if he plays. I don't know. I feel like Warren might actually get off to a good start if Booker does end up missing, say, the first, 3 to 4 games. They said 6 weeks, and from that day it would have been the exact date of their 3rd game of the year. So let's say he misses the first 3 games or so. It makes me want to maybe take Warren with my last pick or two, just even consider him a streamer that I just draft for the first week or so.
Are you
Yeah,
not on
maybe
the
more.
Are you not on the Okobo bandwagon then?
I mean, I think he's going to be fantasy relevant. I just don't think he's going to take a ton of shots right away. I think, you're getting rid of 20 shots from Booker. They got to go somewhere, and I feel like it's most likely going to be Warren just based on, the profile of the guys out there.
I think
Well,
Daniels.
there's a
Daniels
related
might be a guy too.
a related news story I can throw out there too, though, is that the Suns are showing interest in Spencer Dinwiddie, Corey Joseph, Patrick Beverley, with Beverley seeming to maybe be the favorite. Do you guys think the Suns could add one of those guys? And then, does that immediately make those guys even more fantasy relevant?
Oh, for sure.
Well, I think Beverley is definitely the obvious choice in terms of the market. I mean, the Clippers are kind of loaded in terms of the volume of personnel that they have in the backcourt, and drafted 2 guards as well themselves, Jerome Robinson and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Avery Bradley's going to be healthy. Teodosic, didn't they matched the offer sheet, didn't they, on Tyrone Wallace as well?
Yep.
So it's a crowded backcourt. So you could definitely see something in the works there. Also, Phoenix have also shown that they're trying to do something, aren't they? So I don't think you can rule it out that that they're going to be exploring the market. But I also don't think they're going to be panicking either. Melton and Okobo, for me, in the short term at least, are certainly going to be able to help contribute immediately. I mean, Elie Okobo, I know he's only just been drafted, but in the French playoffs, he absolutely carried his side. So he's got pro basketball experience. So I could see a situation where, he could soak up some minutes right from the off. It's the same with Melton. We're not talking about a guy who was a one-and-done freshman. So, I do think there's options there. I think it might be a little bit overblown that Phoenix haven't got any point guards as such, but obviously it's devastating news if it does linger. But I think that they will explore the market, but I don't think they need to panic too much.
Son, what do you think? Oh, no, sorry, Viz, you want to jump in?
I was just saying, what about the thought of Milos going to Phoenix, even just as a guy to teach the young guys, and he doesn't have to play more than 20 minutes? I mean, the Clippers have to get rid of somebody.
Yeah, there's that.
They have 3 more contracts than they can even have, so
Yep.
Someone's got to go, and maybe they figure out a salary dump where they end up giving 3 guys to Phoenix and take 1 back or something. But I don't know, with Ryan Anderson there, and they got Milos, they could have a really exciting offense. At least, I mean, granted, they're probably going to be the worst defensive team in the league then, unless Ayton made some real strides. But I mean, I don't mind the idea of just getting him as a 1-year stopgap and help teach the 2 young guys, and instead of getting Beverly and him probably wanting to play 30 minutes and blocking the other 2 a bit.
You kind of feel they've got the personnel to be able to do that as well, don't they? Because if you have a rotational set where you're running Milos out there, and you got the protection potentially of TJ Warren and DeAnthony Melton and Trevor Ariza, you can kind of make up for his sort of defensive deficiencies, if you like, with other personnel on the court. So for me, I like that. I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, you would think that the Clippers would be higher on Beverly since they have some offensive weapons. They'd want his defense, unless they know something about Beverly that we don't. I don't know how his recovery is coming, but Son, where would you rank Beverly if he was to get traded to the Suns here?
Depending on health, obviously, but yeah, if he goes to Phoenix and he starts there, I mean, he's top 100 player for me. I mean, who's it? I don't think Okobo is going to get too many minutes. Shaq Harrison is Shaq Harrison. So, if Beverly is able to get close to, high 20s in minutes, I mean, playing in Phoenix, that's like the most fantasy friendly environment out there. So, yeah, that'd be a great situation for him. I do like the Teodosic spin though. I think that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, he would fit very well for that team because they would do well with having a distributor. They don't need a scorer, so Yeah, I mean the situation, from both angles, the situation does seem to fit well. So
Cool. So another point guard news, I guess Kyrie Irving was in a scrimmage with Kevin Durant and James Harden. It was just a star-studded scrimmage, I guess, down in Miami. And the word from the scrimmage is that Kyrie Irving looked amazing. Is Kyrie Irving going to finish better than Chris Paul, Damian Lillard this year in the point guard standings, or are there just too many mouths to feed in Boston?
I mean, I have him pretty close. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
sorry. I have him pretty close.
No,
So
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, I would put Lillard ahead of the two only because of the injury risk. I don't think he's as big of a risk as Paul and Kyrie are. But I mean, there's always a chance. Kyrie shot 49% last year from a point guard. Like, that's absolutely insane, and he easily deserves to be a top 15 pick, even with that risk built in. Like, you're getting great free throw percentage on volume, quality threes. The steals have dropped down, but they're still above one at least. The assists are 5, which isn't bad, and the turnovers have gradually decreased since he's been in the NBA too. So, I mean, I feel like we kind of know who Kyrie is at this point. I mean, he is, this is his age 26 season. He's a damn good player, and it's just hoping he stays healthy and that last year's issues are behind him.
So some other stuff out there. Sorry, Craig, you're gonna chime in on the Kyrie
They're
Irving.
not an element as well, though. We're in that kind of time of the season where it's the best shape of their life sort of news, isn't it?
For sure.
Boston will be looking to alleviate a lot of fans' concerns that they might have with Kyrie Irving, especially Gordon Hayward as well. So everything you're going to read, I think, is going to be positive in terms of the health. But it's Kyrie, obviously, he's a top 10 talent for fantasy for me if he's healthy, but it is about the health. But then he's in that cluster, isn't he, of that kind of second, third round where you got a lot of point guards very much in that same situation, Chris Paul, John Wall, Kyle Lowry, they all have that question mark that, if they're healthy, they have huge upside for fantasy. But it's going to be interesting to see, one, how Boston use Kyrie Irving, sort of in terms of, is he going to rest at points? Are they going to, down the minutes a bit just to make sure that he's going to be there available for the playoffs? So I think there are enough red flags there to be concerned to not warrant reaching too high on him. But as a player, like Son said, he's in terms of talent very, very viable, sort of to be drafted up there. I just think you've got to temper expectations a bit in terms of what Boston's plan might actually be with him to make him last the entire season.
Yeah, Son, do you know how many minutes off ban you have him projected for?
Yeah, I'm down for 32. So, I mean, I got Lillard at 36. So right there, there's a difference. But,
right.
32 might be a ceiling, right? Ceiling projection for Kyrie. Where are you guys putting him?
I mean,
30?
I mean, that's where he was last year, 32.
Yeah.
I mean, 32 seems reasonable. Maybe, I mean, I can't see him going below 30.
Okay.
But, with Smart, Rozier still there, I mean, I suppose that they try to keep him down, like Craig said, to keep him healthy. But, I mean, 30 seems like the absolute floor. I don't see any way he goes below that.
Well, and with a weak Eastern Conference, they're going to be in a lot of games where they're blowing people out too, and they're going to be able to rest them.
But even
sometimes that could be a bit overrated, though. They're going to be blowing them out. I mean, in terms of the personnel there, if there's a guy that I'm not concerned about in terms of too many mouths to feed, it's Kyrie Irving. Mm-hmm. If he's on the court, he's going to feed. It's as simple as that. He's the best finisher on the team and one of the best finishers in the NBA, if you like.
Right.
But I think you just, especially if you're in a head-to-head league, I think that you are looking towards that goal of what's my team going to look like come the playoffs. And in the fantasy playoffs, the one thing you don't really want to have is your second round pick sitting on the bench or being rested, because they're the biggest games of your season, aren't they? So I think you've just got to sort of be a little bit wary about what the plan might be at the crucial time of the season in your head-to-head leagues.
So another news story I saw out there is that Rodney Hood is going to re-sign with Cleveland. I want to combine this story with we wanted to talk a bit about Cedi Osman as a late round sleeper. He's been playing really well on the FIBA basketball, being the top scorer, hitting treys, shooting seems to have improved. Is there any value there with Hood, with Osman? Would you prefer one over the other? Are either of those guys even worthy of a draft pick or best left to the free agent wire? Son, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, Cleveland was one of the more difficult teams for me to project, just in terms of allocating the whole pie. I mean, I think the only guy that I have locked in for sure is Kevin Love, and I think that's why I'm kind of higher on him than most. In terms of Hood and Osman, I'm not a big fan of Hood. I kind of had some hope for him the last year and a half or so, just because, I mean, man, he's like 6'8", 6'9". He can shoot over anybody. The potential is there, but just watching him play, like, he's just too one-dimensional. And I feel like just mentally, like, he may be a mental midget to some degree.
He 100% is.
Yeah, right. You're a Jazz fan,
yeah.
so
Yeah, Viz has been following Hood for quite a while as a Jazz fan.
For sure.
I really just think that is a lot of it is just he turned down, it was something like 448 from Utah, and it just kind of like lingered with them all year, and like all the Jazz lineups are better without him. And well, I mean, someone has to be the number 2 option on this team, and there is a chance it's Hood, but the problem from a fantasy perspective is he's not even going to average a steal a game. He doesn't get to the line enough for his free throw percentage to matter. The rebounds are bad. He gets no assists and no blocks. The field goal percentage isn't good. Like, he basically just becomes blank threes and could be decent points, but you're not going to really get anything else. So, from Cleveland's perspective, for 1 year, $3 million, I think it's great. Like, you get a chance and you get to find out, see if he can do more, because like I said, they don't really have anyone else besides Kevin Love. But from fantasy, he's always been a pass for me, just because the contributions across the board just aren't there. Or, Osman, we don't really know much at this point, at least from his time in the NBA. He only played 11 minutes a game last year, but maybe there's something a little bit more there, and I'm kind of interested to find out. I mean, I'm sure, Craig, you've seen more of him than I have.
Well, Craig, I just want to jump in. Before Craig's going to remind us to not forget about Colin Sexton, but as a second option. But Craig, I know you seem to be pretty high on Osman. How do you feel him versus Hood, and then get into Colin Sexton's potential second option? Even though rookies tend to not do that great in their first fantasy year, I don't know if this is a different situation or not. What do you think?
Well, I agree with Rodney Hood. I mean, last year, when he went to Cleveland, he saw 25 minutes a game, and he did shoot 44% from the field whilst he was at Cleveland, and got his 10 points. But everything else is hollow, and you got to think that with LeBron gone, the field goal percentage is going to go back down to his career mark of 42%. The potential is going to be there for a small uptick in threes and a few more points, I think. But out of the two, I think Cedi Osman's the guy for me. The real key for Cedi Osman in terms of how his value is going to sit is the pace of play for Cleveland. I don't know how much you guys have watched Cedi play, but he's at his best at a fast tempo, and he's really, really strong in transition basketball as well. I think there'll be plenty of minutes for him. When I say plenty, we're probably talking low 20s, I think. But this is a guy who is a very good spot-up shooter. The counting stats are probably going to be a little bit on the hollow side, but I think you're going to be looking at pretty decent field goal percentage. He won't get to the line enough for it to really hurt. He'll spend a lot of time on the perimeter. But this is a 22-year-old that can play. He played in a very, very good Turkish league before he was drafted. Guys like, he's on the same side as Furkan Korkmaz, a guy that the Phillies spent a very high draft pick on a couple of years ago. So I think the key for me is going to be not so much necessarily the personnel. I think he'll get his sort of low 20 minutes regardless, and potentially more later on through the season. But you get the best out of Cedi if Cleveland push the pace, really, because the real strength that he has is his game in transition. And you can potentially see that, I think, with Cleveland. You know, you look at some of their more sort of benchy, their role or rotational guys. You know, a guy like Ante Zizic as well. You know, it's another guy that thrives playing on pace. You know, another good basketballer in transition. So
I could really see Jordan Clarkson thriving in a fast pace and potentially being a popular waiver wire pick at some point.
Dude, he sucks. Clarkson sucks.
He does suck.
But he could fill it up.
Doesn't mean he's not going to be fantasy relevant just because he might just have some random games where he just goes off because he takes a ton of shots. I mean, Osman shot like 56% from the line last year, Craig. That's just a small sample size, right?
Yeah, but again, how many free throws? He couldn't have taken any more than one a game, I would have thought.
No, he's not even there. That's what I'm saying. Like, I looked at his Euro numbers, and he was in like the 70s. I assume that's what we can expect. 73%
free throw shooter, I think.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah. So that would be, if people look at his numbers from last year quick, it would stand out. But just kind of want to make sure they realize that it's not really a concern. But I mean, there's a chance that he's at least even if he plays low 20 minutes, he's pushing one steal a game, which. I mean, Rodney Hood wasn't even getting there playing 30 minutes for Utah, so you're getting a boost right there.
Yeah. No, the little that I've seen of Osman, summer league and a little bit last year, he definitely intrigues me. He's very athletic. He can shoot and he can take it off the dribble. My issue or my problem with projecting Cleveland is. Okay, so you got Sexton. I got him down for mid-20s, right? And Hill is still there. It's mid-20s.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Clarkson, I mean, where are the minutes coming from? I have him down for 10 because you still have J.R. Smith and Rodney Hood. They're each going to get around 20 minutes, right? So then you go to the small forward position. Kyle Korver's still there. David Nwaba's there. And Osman. And,
Sam Decker as well, isn't it?
Do they have Decker?
Yeah, they got Decker.
Okay, that's a lot.
I forgot about that. But, I can't even project Decker for, I don't think he's that good. And, he's going to get, a couple minutes?
You gotta love Kevin Love this season.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's why I love Kevin Love. But, I mean, how many guys is that? 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 guys.
The whole roster.
In the backyard. Yeah, on the wing and the backcourt. So, if Osman, if we're projecting Osman for 20 to 20 plus minutes a game, who does he take that away from? Does he take minutes away from?
I would think it's either Clarkson or
Korver.
Clarkson, yeah, I bumped down Clarkson. That's why I have Clarkson down for 10. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough. That's why they were very tough for me, just because they have so many guys.
I feel like Korver and J.R. Smith are going to take huge minutes hits this season.
Okay.
Compared to last year.
It's possible. I mean, I don't know what they're. It's so hard to say what they're going to do until we see them play.
Right.
Yeah, that's our job right now, though, Biz.
Yeah, it's trying
to
project.
Out.
Yeah. I mean, how many guys? I mean, after Love, do you even want to draft any of these guys outside of the last round or two? Like even George Hill was probably the second safest in quotes guy on the team.
I think Nance is probably the only other Cavs guy I would consider.
So boring.
That's what I mean.
I think what you're going to get out of this team, though, is you're looking at Kevin Love, or you're hoping for something out of Colin Sexton that might, probably a little bit too soon. But you're talking about Kevin Love and a bunch of spot-up shooters, really, aren't you? You're drafting someone in the hope that they're going to contribute you a couple of threes a game at a solid, percentage.
Right.
And look at the personnel that they have. Let's take David Nwaba, possibly Sam Decker out the picture, but you've got a lot of guys, Korver, J.R. Smith, Sexton, Cedi Osman, that are going to spend time off the ball on the perimeter shooting. I know Colin Sexton's probably going to end up being the primary ball handler for the majority of the season, but he's not a natural point guard, really. He's more of a shooting guard that's almost forced to play the point because of his size. So I kind of agree with you. Who outside of Kevin Love and seeing what they have in Colin. I really like Colin Sexton. Super athletic player. But it is a huge transition, especially for a guy that's so small. So
it's Love in Minnesota all over again.
It could literally be a case of Kevin Love, and then you're drafting, who you think is going to be the most efficient and best 3-point shooter for you.
I mean, they're at the other way. I guess they could get their son is if they play Love 10 minutes at center and slide someone up, whether it's Osman or
That's
whoever
true.
to be the 4.
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but if it's if they're going to find a way, that's probably how. I mean, I feel like they're probably going to play Thompson and or Nance and even Zizic. So Love might not get the minutes there, but again, that's one other small chance that they find a few minutes extra to give Osman somewhere. But yeah, it really is a mess trying to project this team.
Love will probably have a lot less three. I wouldn't count on as many threes from Love this season, though.
And I think the potential's there for that. I mean, Tristan Thompson's contract is horrific, so he's not going in, and he's got to see the court because of it. Nance is going to get his as well. But anyone who saw Ante Zizic in summer league, I mean, the body just looks fantastic now. He looks like he's ready to play in the NBA. I've always been a big fan of Ante Zizic as a player. He's not super athletic. We're not talking about a high echelon fantasy kind of upside guy, because he doesn't have the athleticism to really do that, ever in his career. But you looked at the body, you looked at the way he handled the better play, the better bigs in summer league. He gave a guy like Wendell Carter Jr., all sorts of problems on both ends of the floor. So I don't think we can underrate a guy like Zizic necessarily taking, I wouldn't say considerable, but significant minutes away from guys that we think might be relevant.
Wait, hold on. I'm taking notes. Check out Zizic's body. Okay, hold on. We can keep going.
No, that's fair. I think I need to change because I had Channing Frye slotted in there, so I probably got to bump Frye out and put Zizic in. You think he gets like 10 to 15 minutes, Craig? You think he's ready for that kind of role?
I could see 10 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw Cleveland at all in summer league, but the body.
Saw a little bit. No, he did look good. Yeah.
It looked. I mean, forget the. It's summer league, so you take the statistics with a pinch of salt. But he did. It was the first time he really looked like the man among boys, if that made sense. He struggled. He'd struggled in summer league before, so it looked like it was a big step forward. Not just in terms of his performance, the body now looked ready. He looked like he was ready to contribute in a more positive way in the NBA. So I think 10, 12 minutes a game over the course of the season is not necessarily out of the question. I think that he's a guy that's been a little bit overlooked in real life now. You don't necessarily want him in fantasy just yet. I think he's definitely a dynasty stash. But I think he's become a little bit too much of an afterthought. This is still a guy who can play and could turn into a good role player in the NBA.
Well, the other thing too is, we don't know how Cleveland's season is going to go. Like, they could hang around the playoff picture most of the year and try to fight to get in. The East is bad enough; it wouldn't shock me if they're around 35-ish wins. They also could be pretty bad. Love's missed over 20 games 2 straight years, and they could fall off pretty hard. And if that's the case, I think we end up seeing a ton of Zizic down the stretch. Osman too, for that matter. So they could be guys, at least, even if you don't draft them, keep them in the back of your mind, because they can make a difference maker, down the stretch in your league and even in the playoffs if you make them in head-to-head leagues.
Sure. We've also got to remember there's got a guy like Cedi Osman, Ante Zizic, same with Sexton. I think we've really got to, there's the potential there that this could be some of their best players over.
Right.
They are, a guy, Cedi Osman is a talented player. In the World Cup qualifiers that's going on at the moment, I think he just put up 23 points or something against Czech Republic. He had 20 odd against Germany the other day. These are impressive performances, and the opportunity's now there. Yes, it's a crowded situation, but it's not so crowded with so much talent that there isn't the opportunity for him, if he demonstrates he's good enough, to run away with the job. We see it all the time, third-year breakout guys. Why not Cedi?
Yeah, I'd feel much more comfortable taking a chance on Osman versus like someone like Sexton. You just think of last year when guys like Dennis Smith Jr. and Darren Fox, they had all this hype. Dennis Smith Jr. was had a great summer, and then just was really hit or miss during the season, and that's just a rookie thing.
but it's a mistake, I think, to label just on, from a historical standpoint. I think you've got to look at each guy individually and see how that skill set's going to translate, rather than think, well, Fox struggled last year, Ball was hurt, and then Akina was raw. Sexton does have the opportunity, and like I always say, I think you've just got to know what it is, what the skill set is that you're getting. Colin Sexton isn't a guy that's going to give you a ton of assists. He is more of a shooting guard that's going to play the point because of his size. But he is super athletic as well. He's a dynamic, exciting player to watch. He's a much better shooter than his field goal percentage or 3-point numbers in college suggested, just because he was forced to take on, the keys to the offense role because they didn't have much else. He was given the free reign. Like I always say, I think just trying to say, well, all one and done rookies expect them to struggle, I don't think it's necessarily the case. I just think you've got to look at each individual case as it stands.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just me. I'm risk averse, so.
I just don't know how Lou is going to distribute these minutes at all. Like, are they really trying to win that hard? Are they going to try to develop these young guys even in the beginning of the year? It's super interesting. I mean, he can play Clarkson at the point guard some too. Hill's not having good. I just don't know what he's going to do. To me, I'd rather just never see Clarkson play just because he's awful. And I think at this point we all know it. If they just cut him out of the rotation and then you have Hill and Sexton in the point guard minutes, and then Smith and Nwaba getting shooting guard minutes, and even a Hood can play a few minutes there, and then that frees up some minutes for Osman and Corver at the 3. I don't want to see Clarkson anymore. He's unesthetically he's just so tough to watch. He's so tough to watch, let alone that he's bad too.
Well, now that since Viz is getting worked up, one thing, and this is something that has gotten Viz worked up before, is that my gamble this season has been a big year for Zach LaVine.
Oh yeah,
coming out. So. I made a couple predictions where I thought that Zach LaVine and Nicholas Batum could be challenging for All-Star spots this season. And I know Viz is very anti LaVine. His favorite LaVine is still the singer of Maroon 5, but he's against the Zach LaVine, the basketball player. I think LaVine's in a situation where he's going to get a ton of minutes. He has the ability. I know we always harp on his defense, but now that his knee is feeling better, he has the hops, the agility to be a threat on defense. I don't see why he won't just be able to, especially in the East, vie for an All-Star spot. If Viz, you want to come at me or whatever with counterpoints, feel free.
Fantasy, I think LaVine. I feel like LaVine in fantasy, there could be plenty of value here. I do think he's going to take a ton of shots, maybe even a bit too many for him. I think part of the reason he was very efficient in Minnesota last year was he wasn't putting up a ton of shots. But his defense is bottom 5 in the league, and I just maybe if his numbers are gaudy enough. He could still make an all-star team. Lou Williams pushed for last year, and he's absolutely awful defensively too. But I just think that contract was awful, and they got saved by Sacramento offering it to him and just matched anyway. I think that was a horrible deal for them. If I was the team, I'm a bit worried. I'm a big fan of Markkanen, and I'm a bit worried that his volume is going to stay down, and I think he could do more in a bigger role. But between LaVine and Dunn and now Jabari too, they're going to be taking so many shots. And it's as a guy, I kind of wanted to get Markkanen a lot before the offseason. Now the more I think about it, the more I'm worried about his volume staying down. There's a chance that LaVine turns into a pretty good number 2 option in real life. If he can maintain, his effective field goal percentages last year in Minnesota. Granted, it was only 47 games, but it was slightly above league average. Shot really well from 3. Like you said, he is a very good athlete, and I could see the appeal in fantasy for sure. I just am not a fan in real life more than anything.
I don't know. I sense maybe a little hesitation there on the LaVine train. I think Viz is at the ticket counter. He just hasn't bought his ticket yet. But he's definitely eyeing that start time. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think, son? Craig, you want to jump in on the LaVine argument?
I mean, you got two of the biggest black holes on the same team on the court at the same time in LaVine and Parker. So I'm just wondering which guy Bobby Portis punches in the face.
Well, Chris Dunn he took 13 shots a game last year too. Like, for a team that's not that good, they got a lot of guys who take a ton of shots. And like when Minnesota last year, when they had to fit Butler in, it ended up being that Wiggins took a few less shots, and now obviously for the best of the team. Like, I don't know. I just have a feeling that Markkanen is going to be the guy who ends up losing some shots because he's not going to have the ball in his hands as much as the other guys, and I think that's a bit disappointing personally, because I do think he could take another step in his second year, and it's better for the team long term if he does just has the ball more and becomes a focal point of the offense.
Hey, and let's cut Bobby Portis some slack. I mean, who wouldn't want to punch Mirotic in the face? I mean, really, have you seen this guy? I don't know.
I mean, Portis had a pretty good offensive year last year too.
I like Portis a lot in fantasy.
He's just a dumpster fire defensively, but in fantasy it doesn't matter. He can rebound though, which is good in fantasy.
So basically, the Bulls are going to be the worst defensive team in the league.
I mean, Dunn's amazing, right? And then otherwise, Carter and Lopez give you a good foundation. I mean, Lopez doesn't get the rebounds himself, but his teams are always amazing at rebounding because he boxes out so well.
What's his role?
Right, and you don't know, like, are they going to really? I know
mentor.
They're talking about starting. If you're starting Jabari at the 3, like, you're just asking for trouble defensively too.
That's the issue. Let me ask you this, Brent. So LaVine an all-star? Nah, not for me. You can keep that one. But from a fantasy standpoint, what is it you're really hoping for out of Zach LaVine? What is it that for you? Where's the big sell for fantasy? I don't guess it. The field goal percentage is going to be weak. The counting stats are going to be, so for a guy that will get his minutes. There's nothing there defensively, really. Where's the fantasy appeal?
Well, in 2015, he shot 45% from the field. He shot almost 39, almost 40% from 3. He's going to give you good free throw percentage numbers. What I'm really counting on, and this is sort of contrary to most of the advice that I give to people when drafting, but I don't know what it is about LaVine. He makes me get off track. I don't know. Maybe it's the dunking is distracting, but I'm counting on his athletic ability to get him to the line more, where I think he can help you in free throw percentage. And then I'm also counting on, his steal and block numbers to come up. If he doesn't make that jump defensively, then yeah, he's really just going to be, a points and, 4 rebound, 4 assists type of guy. But if he can get you a steal or 2 a game, half a block to a block, plus, over 20 points, 4 to 5 boards, 4 to 5 assists, 3 to 4 threes, with good percentages, I mean, that's a good fantasy player to me. But he's going to really have to make a jump that most people aren't seeing, that for some reason, I just feel like he can do it. But you're really counting on me being some sort of oracle or something, which is probably a bad bet.
See, I get trying to the defensive kind of thing, thinking that maybe he can block more shots because he's athletic. But the most block shots he had in the one full season that he had was 17. You kind of got to be in the position to block the shot to be able to do it. There's more to it than just athleticism.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to turn into Josh Richardson or anything from the 2-guard spot. But maybe it's more from the steals, because you're not drafting a shooting guard for blocks.
Has he ever averaged more than a steal a game though?
That would be
no. Last year you did, yeah, but
27 minutes. So I mean, that was actually a pretty big jump considering The year before, he was at 0.9, playing 10 more minutes. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, we know the blocks aren't there. I mean, maybe the steals can become 1.1, 1.2. But even at that point, you're
Still
basically
talking mediocre, aren't you?
You're talking average
you're
on his
hoping,
position.
You're
Yeah,
hoping
he
for
needs
a
to
jump
distribute.
into mediocre territory. I'm sorry, for me, I don't get it. Sort of trying to, for me, it's like you're hoping for a jump into mediocrity. From terrible to mediocrity. So,
if you end up on a team, if you end up on a team where like you really need his threes, if he can get back to where he was in Minnesota's last year, if he shoots 2.6 threes a game while still shooting 46% from the field, now you're getting a pretty good 3-point specialist, at least. And, again, that's not a guy I'm particularly looking to target.
How much do you want to take away from one of the best NCAA shooters in history, and Larry Markkinen, especially now that you've got a guy like Wendell Carter Jr. there, that is, which is going to benefit Markkinen hugely.
That's his assist numbers could jump up too if he's handling the ball more.
I can see the assist numbers. I think for me, that's like the one area where he can make a huge jump, like what Booker's been doing the last few years, right? But
kind of a CJ McCollum, maybe. Sort of.
Maybe. Like my issue with like the whole defensive thing, like it's really tough for me to expect improvement in defensive stats for certain type of players because most of the time, defense, a lot of it is effort, right?
And instinct.
And instinct, right? But more effort, right? Like look at Blake Griffin, right? Like, he's one of the most athletic guys out there, but yet, that's just not his thing, right? He doesn't want to put in the effort. He doesn't have the instinct. So, like, those type of guys, I always have a hard time being optimistic in improvement just because, you rarely see, the light switch on, or you rarely see a change in mentality. And that's what, more than half of what defense is, right? A mentality, a dog, a dogginess in them to try and go after, balls and things like that. So, that's my with LaVine. But assists, I can see assists.
Yep, and like I said, my prediction for LaVine was that he would make the All-Star team. I didn't necessarily say he was gonna be the greatest fantasy guy, but if he can get up to like CJ McCollum kind of territory, then we're talking about somebody who helps a team, who helps a fantasy team, and it all depends on where he's going.
Team, though, isn't he? CJ McCollum's on a winning team, trying to sort of. The Bulls are not going to be a winning team, are they? So I think his hopes of making the All-Star team are going to be pretty remote.
Yeah.
I mean, is there a better chance that LaVine makes the All-Star team, or that the whole starting five for Boston makes it? Because I honestly think there is. Given how bad the East is,
they'll never.
Like, how many guys are a lock to make the All-Star game, assuming health? Giannis, I'd say
Leonard,
Oladipo at this point.
Lowry,
Leonard. And then the two
Lowry,
the two Sixers guys,
Kyrie,
that aren't on Boston.
Oh,
and then you have So I mean, if you're having 12 guys, like
Greek Freak,
they got a pretty right. Giannis was the first guy
I
said. Like,
sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, so like unless like Beal or Wall get back in, or like Kemba has a really good year or something like that, like there's got to be like 5 or 6 spots still left, and
I mean, John Collins is going to take up one. Yep.
It wouldn't shock me at all if 4,
Batum,
5 of them end up being Boston. Yeah, I mean, it depends what Charlotte does. Like every year, Charlotte outperforms their expected wins, and they just have a bad stretch, lose all these close games, and don't do as well as they should. Like on paper, to me, I think they're better than the Pistons and should get the 8th seed this year, but we've seen this story so many times for them. Like they depend so much on Cody Zeller to carry their team defensively, and it's just like I have such a hard time buying into this Hornets team just because I've been sucked into them ever since they won 48 games, and were they the 3 seed randomly that year? No, they played the Heat and lost in 7 regardless, but they all had 48 wins, whichever way their seed ended up.
It was a 4-5 matchup, I think.
Right. So
Steve Clifford going's got to help, right? You got to think, there's going to be a fresh optimism around, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they have exciting young guys. They have decent veteran presence. I mean, they have an interesting
They have
team.
exciting young guys, don't they? But trying to translate that to wins is...
Well, yeah.
You
I
know,
mean, the Suns have
harder
had
than a lot
exciting
of
young
people
guys
think.
too. Yeah. So we're about, I guess, a little over the halfway point here. So do you guys want to focus a little bit on what we've been seeing from drafts? I know Sun was able to watch a mock draft with some of the CBS Sports guys, and if they're anything like their rankings, it was something you want to do the opposite of after watching it. Or do you guys want to take a look at a couple of more players that have kind of been had some coaches talking about them here?
I got a question for you guys, actually. Going back to the whole Charlotte thing. What do you guys think they do with Kemba? They trade him or did they re-sign him? What's your feel on what direction they're going there?
It all comes down to how well they're playing this season. I think. I think if they do bad early, then look for those Kemba trade rumors to start somewhere around the 20 to 30 game mark. If they start off pretty hot, knowing that they're in the East and they get contributions from Monk and Bridges and these guys look promising, and Batum at the All-Star level, I think he can be at. Then I think there's gonna be a lot of pressure to keep them.
What would I do, or what do I think they're gonna do?
What do you think they're gonna do?
I think they're gonna keep him and eventually.
What you want to do makes no difference.
A 4-year max. I mean, if I were them, I would have traded. Or close to it at least. I mean, Batum got a little less when he got traded there. After the 48 1 year I talked about before, he took a little less than the max. Wouldn't surprise me if Kemba does something similar. I mean, if I were them, I would have traded him at the trade deadline last year.
Agreed.
I mean, there are plenty of teams. I mean, there are teams that could certainly use Kemba, but again, as we talked about last week, on the teams that are contending, who really needs a point guard that bad? I just don't see it. Like maybe Indiana, but in a way, like Oladipo is the pseudo point guard there anyway.
Collison's serviceable. And Tyreek Evans can handle the
Started
ball.
Aaron Holiday as well, didn't they? So,
right, yeah. I just don't see it like a really good team that needs a point guard. And then if they do trade for Kemba to
don't forget about the Lakers. They need a point guard. That was for Sun. Yeah.
He's gonna be 29 years old during this season too. It's not it's not like you're getting his prime for his contract. You're gonna be going into his post prime too. So I expect them to keep him just because it seems pretty clear that Jordan doesn't want the team to bottom out at all. But I don't think it's the right move for the franchise.
With that, could you see them making a terrible mistake kind of move where they end up moving something like Kemba Walker for Nikola Vukovic or something like that?
I don't know.
Or what about for Isaiah Thomas and Will Barton?
That's the kind of boneheaded move that I'm kind of expecting them to make. The Magic are desperate for a point guard. They're loaded in. I say loaded. Their strength in volume in terms of personnel's in the front court. That's the kind of mistake move I can see them making. I think that offering them a 4-year or a max deal is a mistake. I think that we've had the Kemba era. It didn't really get them anywhere in terms of closer to an NBA championship. So I think kind of like the Toronto Raptors have done, you've got to try something different, right? You can't just throw the money at the guy that almost took you to the next level but didn't. So I think you've got to retool. I think you've got to go. Retooling is really hard. You can't just rebuild and it works after a few years. Yeah. But just trusting that Hornets front office to get anything right is just really, really difficult. So I think he's gone. I think he's gone by mid-season or at the trade deadline. And I think that the return is not going to be anywhere near as high as what anyone expects, really.
That being said, I think Kemba Walker, while in Charlotte, is going to be huge. I love his fantasy outlook this season with everything I'm reading about how fast they want to play, and him being the main scoring focus.
Now, right? Clifford's out of town, so they're going to you got to think that the ball movement's going to be a hell of a lot better than it was before.
I mean, this is kind of off topic a little bit, but like, are the Hornets the team like the furthest away from being a like title contender out of anyone in the league? Because like their current core is nowhere near it, and they don't have any interesting young guys really besides Monk who have a chance to even be good. Like
Bridges.
Yeah, Bridges been
sure, that's fair.
Yeah.
I just like looking around.
They
the
had
rest
Kid
of the
Gilchrist.
league, a lot of the bad teams at least have a lot of high picks, or at least like Memphis now got Jaren Jackson. If they decide to trade Gasol and Conley, they're gonna get something decent back more than likely. I just they seem Detroit's the same way. They're the two teams that are the most likely to get the 8th seed in my mind in the East, and they're just stuck in this.
So you might as well go for it, because since you're like 2 or 3 years away if you decide to rebuild anyway. Is that what you mean?
I mean the Pistons for sure, because they're stuck. They took on Blake's deal. Like they're cap stuck to being mediocre. So, if you dirty up the Bucks a little more for the next year or two, so be it. You're already screwed. But, Charlotte, I just think at this point, I would trade Kemba and turn the keys over, let Monk see what he can do. If he can be the number 1 or 2 option and see what you have in him. I think like it was good for the Lakers to see what Kuzma could do at times last year. And obviously the two aren't comparable. They played, completely different positions, but, toy around and see what the guys in Charlotte you do have could do, and who's going to stick around in the long term, because right now you just have more questions than answers in my mind.
Son, what about Denver as a landing spot for Kemba?
I mean, why? They have Jamal Murray.
I'm just thinking, are those guys really pure point guards, though, when you look at Murray and Harris? And
don't they?
But I mean, Jokic, everything. Yeah,
that's
everything runs to Jokic. So
yeah, and Millsap can distribute. They have big guys who can pass. They're sort of like the fantasy team I'm trying to build, point guard list.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Murray. I think it works well though, not having a pure point guard just because Jokic has the ball so much. Like, maybe at the deadline if someone was hurt and, maybe Kemba literally cost next to nothing. But the problem is they already dumped their first round pick to get rid of, was it Fareed, right?
Yeah, I just feel like who's close and has, pieces that someone may want,
I mean, how about this? What about New Orleans and they give up their first round pick if Peyton fails? Yeah. And now you kind of use that to appeal to Davis as someone else. That's the one team that made the playoffs last year that I like, that has point guard questions. I think him and Drew could work pretty well together too. And granted, they don't really have much to give outside of their first round pick, but that could maybe be something.
That's a good segue into what do you guys think of Anthony Davis and his whole agent thing?
Oh, dropping his agent?
Yeah, dropping his agent. So Laker fans are going crazy because supposedly he's
going to go right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think this happens a lot though. This happens a lot with when guys are coming up on their contract years. They signed with someone early on. They got their early deal. Now they're coming up on that. It's time to get my life changing, money. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to jump ship. I think he just wants a guy. I just think he wants to maximize what he has coming to him. And
what is there to maximize? Though? What is there to maximize?
Well, I guess they're pretty set with what you can get. But
everyone's gonna offer him the max, whatever team, right? So, he's been with that one agent for his whole career, and then all of a sudden he just dumps him. I don't know.
Who knows? Maybe he was dating his sister and they broke her heart.
You're Anthony Davis. You're Anthony Davis. You're one of the best players in the league. You're going to get, mega money, whatever decision you make. At one point, you say, "I want to win a champ."
Well, yeah.
Is he coming to LA? Are you telling me he's going to LA?
He's going to Boston. He's going to Boston.
He's going to Boston.
How's he going to go to LA with Clay and Leonard and all these guys already going to LA?
Well, I mean,
and Durant.
Theory, okay, let's say next offseason they sign Kawhi to the max, and then offer everything else that isn't stapled down for Davis. I mean, New Orleans kind of has to do it, right? I mean, does Davis even need an agent? You can get the super max, and that's part of the reason why it's obvious. And the other thing was his agent was the same guy. His original agent was the guy who was Westbrook's, who got him to stay and take the Supermax. Maybe he's given Davis the same advice and Davis didn't want to hear it. I mean, it's a lot of speculation at this point. I think it really comes down to how New Orleans does this year, honestly.
All you have to do is take one look at his eyebrow situation and know that he doesn't listen to anyone around him or what they have to say. And so maybe he just needed somebody who finally told him how it is. Like, hey, Anthony, that whole eyebrow thing, like, it's not cool, man. You got to shave it, and let's go to L.A. There you're going to win.
I just don't see the motivation for him to stay there. I get the loyalty thing, but
Mardi Gras?
This is a business, right? And, in the same way, in your day job, my day job, you go where the money is. You got to go where the money is, and you got to go where you're going to get the most recognition, the most legacy.
If we went where the money is, we wouldn't be doing this, Craig.
This is their lives.
Yeah, he would get the most money staying in New Orleans.
Yeah, no, he can get just as much money. But what I'm saying is,
how much have we been hearing that lately, though?
Also, putting himself in a better position to win a championship ring. How many more years does he want to go up against super teams in the West? And not really have a shot at winning a ring. We've seen Durant take less money to win rings. All these things are happening around him.
Well, Kawhi bought a house in Toronto.
He's holding the cards in his hand, isn't he? And I just don't see a situation where he isn't going to use them because and I don't think you could question his loyalty over that at all either. He's given everything to New Orleans, and I just think Boston or LA, it's going to be somewhere where it's going to give him a shot in his prime years to really go out there and, we're talking about Anthony Davis as well, right? This is a kid that's also got a history of being hurt. So, in his head, we underrate the fact that these guys are still human beings. In his head, he might have doubts whether he'll be able to play at 30 years old, So,
that doubt would be the one reason. The doubt would be the one reason I think New Orleans has somewhat of a chance to keep him, just because can't get the Supermax from anyone else, and you're talking an extra. If he did get hurt, so he's never going to get that 50, or if he gets that 50 from someone else, it's not going to be near the max. You're talking $50 million difference. But again,
I mean, he would have to get DeMarcus Cousins hurt, though.
You're going to have teams that are going to be making, there's. The cap situation now will not be the same as the cap situation. There'll be teams that will be, lobbying for moves to be able to offer that Supermax, isn't it? So I think looking at
the Supermax can only be given by the original team.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, he's going to get the max regardless. And at that point, again, it's not my money. But is there that big of a difference between 30 million a year and 34 million a year and 35 million a year? Not really. I don't think so. Again, it'll be interesting to see what New Orleans does, because even for, Davis is so good. I mean, it's crazy to think he's only made the playoffs twice, given, the caliber of player he is, even in the West, and, being 25 years old. But even him for 1 year is not even a rental, but, they trade him next offseason, they're still going to get an incredible return for him. And if he's not going to sign the Supermax, you have to do it. There's no way around it. You can't wait and see.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Man.
Yeah, and all these guys who are thinking about moving teams should just thank Kevin Durant for taking all the heat off them. Like, we didn't think that anyone would ever get as much crap as LeBron got for going to Miami and that whole decision thing. And then Durant went to the Warriors. I mean, anybody can go anywhere at this point and not get as much heat on them as Durant got for going to the Warriors. So, players can freely decide to just chase a championship as much as they want without worrying about getting it as bad as Durant got it. Did you guys have anything else? I mean, we're coming up on an hour here. Do you want to get a little bit into the draft that you watched, son?
Yeah, sure. So earlier today, I was graciously invited to do a mock with some of the CBS guys, and I guess some of the guys over at RotoWire. So I don't know. There were some interesting things. Giannis went first overall.
Was it a turnover league or no turnover league?
It was turnovers, 9 cat.
Okay, 9 cat. Okay.
Yeah. So
Head to
I
head
get
or
it.
roto?
Head to head.
Okay.
Yeah, 9K head to head. So, I get it. I've
Yeah.
heard a lot of people, on that train of thought. Past Giannis, it's pretty standard. Anthony Davis, Harden, Towns, and then Westbrook went 5, which I thought was kind of interesting.
I like
Considering
Durant as a top
Durant
guy.
went
Yeah.
6. Yeah,
Yeah.
Durant went 6.
Huh.
Um, the rest of the first round went, well, I was at 8, so I took Curry there.
Smart.
And I kind of wanted to try something because in most of the other mocks I was going over on Yahoo, I was ending up with I was going big early, heavy, and I liked my teams actually how they ended up, but I kind of wanted to I noticed um, there's a lot of bigs that you could find later, so I really wanted to go guard heavy in this one, so I went Curry, and then in the second round I went Oladipo.
Smart.
So I kind of like that combo.
Where did
But
Leonard go?
Leonard, so the guy on the turn, he went George Leonard.
That's exactly what I did in the last
So that's
draft
good.
that I did. I had the
Yeah.
12th pick, and I went Leonard and George because I had the 12th pick in a draft right before that, and I went Oladipo, Embiid, and bumped up Embiid, and I regretted not grabbing Leonard. So the next one I went Leonard, George, and I almost went Butler instead of George.
Yeah, that's a deadly combo. Like you did the same thing, right, Craig? You went George
Yeah,
Leonard.
we had you jumped in, didn't you, as well, Brent? We had my Razzball commentator league. I had the 11th pick. I was,
He picked right before me. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted Lillard to be my guy there, but he went the pick before. So I took Paul George. I felt like I got a safety net with the risk of Kawhi. I kind of wanted that top 5, top 6 upside of Kawhi.
And that's why I regretted not grabbing Leonard with my 2 picks right after you.
But it was also the fact I got 2 guys that were shooting guard eligible as well, and I didn't want to be, shooting around at the end of the draft trying to get scraps of guys I didn't want trying to fill, what I consider quite a scarce position. And as it George a couple of days later for Lillard straight up anyway. So I kind of got what I wanted in the end. But I just, as a combination, I thought it was, there was an element of risk with Kawhi, but in terms of a combo, I kind of felt I got a little bit of everything really. Obviously light probably in rebounds and assists compared to most other guys as a 1-2 combination. But I felt, I felt it left all my options open for rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6 to really take the draft still wherever I wanted it to go rather than having it predetermined. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I almost like picking at the end of drafts this season because I love the Oladipo Butler, Oladipo George, Leonard George, Leonard Oladipo, and even I bumped Embiid up at that point. I love those guys give you across the board stat stuffing ability, with your first couple picks. You get the shooting guard, which is probably the thinnest position. Because I think there's a lot of point guards late you could grab, So what happened from there, son? Oh, sorry, Craig.
For me, six. Sorry to interrupt, but 6 I feel this year is kind of the magic number for me. There's, who I have in my top 6, I kind of feel are very interchangeable, and I'm happy with any of them. So if I can get that sixth pick, I'm kind of just as happy with the 6th pick as I am, any guy that I could get ahead of him. So, give me any of Cat or Harden, Giannis,
Durant.
Curry, Durant as well, and who's and Giannis? Did I say Giannis?
Nope.
But those 6 guys, give me any of those. So sixth pick for me, I think is the perfect spot.
Yeah.
Okay. 2 things from round 2 that kind of stood out to me. Simmons went 14th overall.
Wow.
And DeRozan went the middle of the second round. So I don't know if that was a mistake or not, but what are your thoughts on those 2?
I'm getting nowhere near Simmons. I'm not quite as down on DeRozan, but I'm not gonna have Simmons or DeRozan on any team. What about you, Viz?
The guy who takes Westbrook takes Simmons.
That's a good question. No, he did. No, he did not.
I can see, because you see, in that situation, if someone's
Actually,
reached on,
yeah, no,
if
that
someone's
no,
reached,
that would be a perfect pairing for sure.
yeah, if someone's reached on Westbrook, then for me, I think you're kind of doing so. When I say reach, I'm saying reach in a 9-cat league. You're kind of doing so. I think doing the same second round. So I was just curious whether if the guy who did take Westbrook 5 or 6 or whatever it was also took.
Actually, the guy that took Westbrook went DeRozan.
So that's really kind of confused, isn't it? Really.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know.
All of DeRozan's value, I think.
Yeah. So I don't know what happened there. Maybe it was a mistake or something.
Who did the guy who took Simmons take in the first round?
Simmons, Jimmy Butler.
Wow, Butler went that.
He went 11. So he picked 11. So
I like Butler a lot.
Yeah, and then Simmons.
Still, I don't know that Butler shoots enough threes to justify. Interesting.
Yeah.
I could see like pairing Simmons with like Lillard or.
Yeah, outside of injury, Butler is like, his floor is just so high because he's gonna get like, Tibbs is gonna be a cycle man and playing like 40 minutes every game, So
Yep.
There's that. But
I had a hard time deciding between him and George this year.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think I prefer George, honestly.
George shoots so many threes.
Just because, again, I feel safer about George playing more games than Butler. I know
that's
George
funny because George is the one whose bone was literally sticking through his skin a couple years ago.
Right. But again, outside of that 1 year, I mean, played 79 games last year, 75, 81, 80, 70. Like
outside of his legs snapping in half.
Right. For Butler, it's just like 15 games, 20 games. At this point, like if you get more than 65 games from Butler, I'd be, that's a huge win and a bonus because you can't really expect it. And I kind of feel the same way about Chris Paul at this point too, and why I would have him a little bit lower. He's going to be an absolute monster on a per game basis, but it's hard to count on him playing more than 65 games.
Yep, that's why I could have had Paul in those drafts, but I passed to take either Oladipo or George or Leonard. I feel more comfortable with Leonard than I do with Paul. Just that knee, I feel it's like bone on bone.
One. Yeah.
I know Sun loves Paul. I mean, are you willing to roll the dice with Paul if you're at the end of the first round? Yeah.
I am. I like him a lot, but he ended up going 9th in the second round. So was that 21? So I think the guy that took Paul paired him up with Towns. So that's a great combo, right?
That's like a dream starter right there.
Paul stays healthy. That's
So get the big man, get the assist.
Who did the Kemba guy take? The guy went first. Who the guy who picked first take coming back?
So coming back, he went Lowry to Mitchell.
I was gonna say I'm sure he went Lowry. Yeah. And then Mitchell. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, Lowry and Mitchell. So that's a nice little combo. I noticed assists go fast. There's a few guys later, but they're tough to find. I think later in the draft.
See, the article I wrote that we just posted about draft strategy was, I really think the way that like guys like George and Leonard and Oladipo and even and Horford, these guys who get 4, 5, 6 assists a game. I think you can pair if you draft properly, you can pair guys who aren't point guards but get you enough assists all together to make you not have to grab a Lowry or a Paul or something like that. And then later in the draft, you can just kind of, I've been shoring up my team with like a Reggie Jackson or like a Dinwiddie or a De'Aaron Fox or something like that, like later on. Just to.
That's how I kind of finished. What I started with in the draft that we were at, Brent, at the weekend. I had George and Kawhi, and then there was the huge run of point guards that went off the ball. Your Kembas, Simmons, Pauls, Lowry, Wall, etc. So by the time I kind of picked again, there wasn't a point guard there that I really wanted. So I think I picked again at 35. I think it was. So the obvious fit was Draymond Green, really, because I know I'm going to get 6 assists or 7 assists or whatever.
That's kind of why I like Batum is on a lot of my teams. because of the assists he can give you. But
Do
yeah,
you
I love
think they go
Draymond there.
down
I love
this year,
Draymond
right?
with that. What's that?
With the team, you got to think that the assists are going to go down a touch this year, right?
Yeah, but I mean, he was what, like 5 or something, 4.5,
Yeah, but with
5.
but he's going to be playing a lot more forward this year, though. You got to fancy.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I don't know. I mean, I could see, depending on what type of offense they're running, I could see if they want to do a lot of ball movement, he could end up with sort of Draymond Green-ish type of numbers with maybe a little more scoring. But
He's a threat. He's a threat to triple.
what do I know? I like LaVine, so.
So round 3, I think this interesting thing that stood out to me was Kevin Love. So he went third pick, third round, and everybody in the chat room was like, "Oh man, I wish he fell to me." I wanted Kevin Love. So, I think everybody's on the Kevin Love, usage monster train. So
I got him in the league where I had first pick, and I was able to get him on the turn. Yep.
Okay.
I went Harden first, and I knew I had posed the question to you guys because I knew I was picking first, and everyone was like, "Oh, pick Anthony Davis," but it was after I'd already picked. But just I don't know, with Harden, he gives you so many numbers that are harder to get later. I just feel like there's a lot of really good big guys later on. So I went Harden, Love, Capella. Is that what I did?
Capella. Right.
Yeah, Capella. Capella.
Yeah.
Capella.
I don't hate it.
Yeah. Harden, Love, and then I don't normally like Capella, but I feel like with Love's free throw shooting and Harden's free throw shooting, the only category that Capella doesn't really help you in is free throws, and I feel like I can offset that a little with those guys. And I grabbed some big guys later like Jarrett Allen, who can shoot free throws, Barton, Batum, even Valanciunas. So it's not even. I just feel like if I could stack free throw guys around him. Where did Capella go in the CBS draft?
He went pretty high. I'm looking right now. One thing I did notice, like Capella, like as much as I love him, you can find similar guys later in the draft. So he went in the 4th round, 9th pick of the 4th round.
Okay.
So let me see. Yeah, so
DeAndre 9th pick in the 4th.
In the 4th, yeah.
Yeah, that feels quite low. I feel that.
Yeah, he dropped.
Because I took him in the 3rd.
Yeah, he dropped. A lot of people were going over.
I took him with the 29th pick.
Yeah, Ayton went 2 picks ahead of him, and Vucevic went 1 pick ahead of Ayton. So that was interesting. Oh, Booker still went the 4th pick of the 3rd round. So I don't think people are too concerned, as we were talking about earlier.
Where did Allen go? He's kind of been a hot name.
I took Allen in the 5th round.
That's where I got him.
Yeah. Your boy LaVine went right ahead of him. Aaron. Oh, so Craig will love this one. In the 4th round, Blake Griffin goes in the 8th pick. Aaron Gordon 11th pick, and D'Angelo Russell the 12th pick. That's like your dream round, huh? Right there.
Say that again.
The 4th round, the 8th pick, Blake Griffin. 11th pick, Aaron Gordon. 12th pick, D'Angelo Russell.
I think that is a perfect round. I think it's a I like Gordon for specific team builds. I like Griffin for specific team builds, and I think D'Angelo Russell's coming at a value this year, but 4th round, doesn't. I don't mind taking him back into the 5th, early 6th is where I'm comfortable taking Russell. Probably not in the 4th, but I mean, I love Aaron Gordon. I don't mind owning Blake Griffin, but it's got to be in the right team build. Gordon's going to plummet your percentages. You know that Griffin's going to take a power forward or centre roster spot without contributing defensively. So in the right, like DeRozan, in the right team, great, but it's got to be the right team. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It's all context.
Whereas a guy, another guy in that kind of territory, like again, which kind of it's got to be the right team build. A guy like Vucevic, for example, he's a positive contributor across the board. Good points, good boards, Shoots a 3, gets a block and a steal with those as well. But it's got to, you've got to have that sort of rim, a good rim protector with him as well. So, there's lots of guys in that sort of territory there where we spoke about it before. It's all about how your team's looking at that point and how they're going to fit in, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Where did Tobias Harris go?
Oh, I took him in the 3rd, I think.
That's where I got him in 2 drafts.
Wait, I'm looking here. No, they're 4th. Where did he go? The 4th round. I took him in the 4th.
Yeah, I got him at the 3-4 turn.
3-4 turn.
Yeah, I took that 2 drafts in a row where I picked 12th. I ended up with Harris, taking him at the 3-4 turn. I love Harris this year.
I like him a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I paired him with Leonard and George on one team, and Oladipo, Embiid, Harris, Horford in another league. I just think, I don't know, I think Harris is going to just have a monster year. I'm betting a lot. I'm putting him on a lot of teams, so I hope so.
No, he really impressed me last year.
Yeah.
Let's see, round 6 is when, so the Metro Court guys, Otto Porter and Robert Covington, they were sitting there for a long time. And so it's round 6. So it looks like that's the spot. So I was curious to see where they would go.
I've seen Porter go a lot earlier.
Yeah, I think that's a really good value for Porter. Yeah. I mean, Covington makes sense because he's going to bomb your field goal percentage.
Yeah.
But, Porter's just so steady across the board. Like, talking about team fit, like, he literally fits on every team. He doesn't do anything particularly well except, I guess the field goal percentage, really. I mean, he shot over 50% 2 straight years, which, with 2 threes a game is great.
How does Howard affect Porter's defensive stats?
I don't know.
Maybe a little less rebounds.
Much. I mean, I don't know. I don't think it changes a ton. Yeah, he probably goes back down to like 5 rebounds a game instead of 6.5. I don't.
He tends to get the longer rebounds anyway.
Washington is such a weird team to me, man. Like, I like the Howard signing, as weird as that sounds, for $5 million, because this is another team who's just been completely stagnant and needed to try something. I don't think it's going to work, but that doesn't mean I don't like it, because I think it's worth the shot. But there's also a chance that this team just they all hate each other even more than Wall and Gortat hated each other last year. It becomes this huge mess, and I'm kind of excited to see it in a way. I've always liked Wall, and just.
What's crazy is they can't possibly be the biggest mess in Washington history, because didn't what's his name pull a bunch of Arenas pull guns on a guy who ended up murdering someone?
Yeah, what a mess.
Yeah. Hey, where was Doncic? Where did Doncic go? Because I've seen him around the 5th, 6th.
Yeah, I've been taking him. I take him pretty much every time in the 6th round.
Yep.
Yeah, so
in the league with Craig, the commenters league where Craig put together, I took at the 5th, 6th turn, I took Ayton and Doncic, and went completely against my norm and took 2 rookies back to back. But I felt like it was if I wanted to get Doncic on a team, I was gonna have to get him.
Yeah, 6 is the spot. I mean, Ayton. I mean, the hype on Ayton. Like when it first started mocking, he was going in like the 5th, 6th. Now he's in the 4th.
Yeah,
there's a chance he gets into the 3rd. It's crazy,
man.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, remember Viz when we were talking, breaking down his numbers? We were like, dude, this is crazy. But then we look at the numbers, and he's like, yeah, he should be up here.
And even if they're I don't think they're going to be tanking at the end of the year. It's definitely not nearly as bad as last year. But I mean, if they do, he's still going to be playing plenty. I'm not worried about him. So
yeah,
it's just it doesn't look as gaudy, but he's just one of those guys where I went to one of his summer league games in Vegas while I was there, and it's didn't feel like he was doing much. And then you look up and he has 18 and 12 and a few blocks. It's just so easy for him to do it. And granted, I expect some growing pains in the NBA, but there's no denying the offensive upside he has.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you got J-Rich anywhere, son?
I did not. Where did he go?
Sorry, I took him over Doncic in the 6th in one league. I passed on Doncic.
He went at the end of the 5th.
Okay, yeah, that's about right. 5th, 6th, yeah.
What about some of the what we would consider maybe hype guys that we've sort of spoken about. So let me think. A guy like, where did Jonathan Isaac go, for example? That's a guy that we all kind of like this season.
I'm right there with you on him. So I took him in the 8th. Where did you take him? Around there or 9th?
I got him in the 7th, I think, with the 84th pick. I mean,
I got him in the 9th in my earliest draft. I got him in the 9th with the 113th pick.
Okay, yeah. So I was in the 8th.
What about Markelle Fultz?
Oh yeah, so I was gonna grab him. I think he went in the 10th. Wait, hold on. Where is he? 11th. 11th. So 4th pick of the 11th.
That really feels like a value there as well.
Yeah.
That's about where Monk's been going, because in the commenter leagues, because everyone reads, listens to our podcast and reads our articles. So Monk's going super early.
Well, like I took Monk in respect out of you for you. I don't like I think if I didn't take him, I don't think anybody would have drafted him, to be honest with you. So you'll be, I think you'll be able to get him, 12th, 13th round, last round pick. I think one thing, like, we're talking about assists earlier. I think guys start looking for the assists like in the 7th, 8th round.
Okay.
That's when people, at that point, people know, like, am I good there, or do I have to play catch up? And when you have to play catch up and assist that late, like, you have to do it across multiple guys. You're not going to find some 8 assist guy or 7 assist guy even in the later rounds unless, like, it causes you to punt multiple spots. So
you see guys, isn't it?
Right,
absolutely. I find that when you're chasing assists late, I think
you
it's
end up
really
screwing yourself everywhere else.
You do.
That's why I really love Harden.
Just saying, punt assists at that point, because the more you start tinkering, trying to find, 3 assists out of this point guard or 3 assists out of that point guard,
right.
Your percentages start to plummet. They're ranked down there because they're defensive. They're probably not great in steals or anything like that. So before you know it, to try and chase one category, you can end up sort of hurting 2 or 3 others, I find. So
yeah. No, absolutely.
That's why I really like taking Harden early, or taking Doncic in there, or taking guys like Oladipo, who get assists, or even guys like Bogdanovich. Like I think where did Bogdanovich get drafted this year? Because I've ended up with him on a couple teams. I kind of like Bog, of course.
Yeah, I ended up taking him. I took him late. I like the steals with him too.
Yeah.
I think, getting back to punting assisting, I think of all the years I've played, I think I've ended up punting assists more than any other category, and it's just how it falls sometimes. Like, say you end up, your early point guard ends up being Kyrie or something, who's only going to give you 5 assists, and then you end up with a bunch of other guys who you don't end up making it up elsewhere. Then screw it, just punt assists. It's not the end of the world, like we've been saying. Don't end up chasing assists, and then you end up killing yourself elsewhere, and you end up getting poor field goal percentage and rebounds, especially now because you had to chase one category.
Yeah, that's why I love Harden as the first pick.
It's definitely worth considering. And then I'm sure you're gonna probably have to punt turnovers then, but whatever. You can randomly win weeks punting turnovers anyway, just because turnovers are fickle. Like, there could be a week where Houston only has 2 games and Harden doesn't kill you there, and you end up winning turnovers that week. So I don't even really look at turnovers that much, to be honest.
I don't even consider turnovers. Yeah. Like, I don't go, oh man, I got too many turnovers.
Right.
But I went with guys like Love and Capella, and who were kind of lower turnover guys. Honestly, turnovers doesn't even cross my mind, especially in a head-to-head. Like, I don't.
Can I ask if you don't really think about turnovers kind of in a draft and almost go in with a punt mentality, then why bother playing 9 cat? You see, for me, I have a hard time.
Well, because that's what's there.
Thinking about it every time.
I'm not going to take Harden and Simmons or. I mean, I am aware of it. Like, I'm not going there's certain big turnover guys that I'm just not drafting anyway. But someone like
No, fair
Harden,
enough,
like
but
someone
my
like
point is
Harden,
so
who's going
many
to fill
people
you
have the
up.
same mentality as you. So many people have that mentality of, well, I don't consider turnovers, or, I just punt turnovers from the off. I find it lazy, and I think that and because it's the one category that most people have that opinion of, I find it's the easiest category to make ground in, because people don't put the same emphasis of research into it, I find.
And I think
So
it's not that, and I think just to defend what I think I'm saying is, it's not that I'm going into it not looking at turnovers. It's just that before I go to a draft, my list of people that I target in a draft tend to not be high turnover guys. Like, I don't like Westbrook or Simmons or guys like that. When you're talking about the very first picks, like, I can make up, like, Harden's not going to kill me so much in turnovers that if I pick with the rest of my team are not high turnover guys, I'm not punting turnovers. I might have a bad turnover night from Harden, but
let's forget about you in a vacuum with your strategy, but let's talk holistically here. My point is that so many people go into a draft with that mentality of not thinking about turnovers, that I feel that with just a little bit of research, and working out your assists per turnovers, your steals per turnovers, 3 per turnover.
Yeah,
I think it can put you so far ahead, or almost a category ahead, without really having to sacrifice anything else, because half the league have got this mentality of, well, I don't really focus on turnovers anyway. Do you get my point?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's what's cool about fantasy basketball, is that preparation and that knowledge ahead of time can give you an advantage. And you're not relying on luck, or so, because turnovers isn't a luck category. Turnovers is a predictable category with certain guys. Maybe a rookie might get better at turnovers to his next year or something like that. But for the most part, it's a predictable category that you're totally right, Craig. Most people just don't consider it because there's so many other categories to look at.
I'm personally guilty of it. 'Cause, I prefer 8-cat personally, and my 2 longest leagues that I've been doing are 8-cat, and I tend to overlook it when I get in head-to-head 9-cat leagues, especially because I have the mentality of, well, I'm going to be streaming to maximize my starts anyway, and I'm probably going to end up getting more starts than my opponent because I'm pushing for it. So I'm probably going to lose turnovers anyway, which isn't necessarily the case by any means. And it's definitely a mistake that I've made in the past and a lot of people make. And you're right to highlight that, Craig.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely something people can keep in mind.
Zig when everyone zags. Flow like water, Bruce Lee.
Well, in my, when I was talking about my draft strategy, I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it. And I think most people go into a draft thinking, I want a well-rounded team. I don't want a lot of turnovers. I don't want this. I don't want that. But you get seduced by a name. You're like, wow, Ben Simmons, but you don't. Your average fantasy basketball player doesn't necessarily consider how much he's going to hurt you in these other categories. Or a guy like Russell Westbrook. Wow, he averages a triple-double. Like, how can you go wrong? But you don't think about how much he's going to hurt you. And then you also don't think about, guys maybe in a new situation, or guys who, were in a bad situation last year, but now they have a new coach. These types of things that the average guy doesn't take advantage of. So just in the vein of, Craig's giving great advice as far as, being able to just by focusing on turnovers, you can get an advantage in your league. How do people avoid, the seduction of the big name or something like that during the draft? Is there any advice you guys have for people?
I think it's very easy to lose track of, particular categories, right? And that's why I've been talking to actually a little bit with Viz and Rudy a little bit. Like, he made this draft app for baseball, which was awesome. And granted, baseball's a little different because it's roto, right? So maybe a little more difficult to do it for head-to-head. But, essentially, like, his Excel spreadsheet just kind of, shows you where you are in each category, like where you need to make up, where you're strong, where you have too much, where you're deficient. And then you're able to, by looking at that, you can kind of configure your draft, depending on where you're weak or you're strong. I know, like, myself, a lot of times, like, I will lose track of where I am in a certain category, and then I have to like go back and kind of like try to mentally count everything, and then be like, oh shoot, I'm a little light here, or I'm too strong here. Um, and hopefully, at some point we could, make something to kind of help out, have some sort of draft app for that. But I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Do you guys ever lose track of like where you guys are at in a particular category?
I mean, I just to speak on Rudy's part, like I use his war room thing for baseball, and it definitely helped me keep track of where I was going with everything, and it would certainly be nice for basketball too. I mean, to Brent's point with like the name factor, it's something that I think this is my 4th year doing hockey, maybe 5th, I don't know. Regardless, trying to ignore the person's name altogether and just trying to focus on the stat line altogether. There's always 10, 15 guys every year in hockey that, I see just going way too early that I rank aggressively low because they've fallen off at that point, and you just kind of have to ignore the name. Like, maybe it's become too trendy at this point, like everyone bashing on Carmelo, but I still feel like if you join a random ESPN mock or league, he's probably going to get drafted still based on the name value. Now, the people listening to this and reading Razzball clearly aren't going to do that, but like it's stuff like that you just got to try to avoid. As far as keeping track of what I'm doing in the draft through basketball, I don't know. I don't think I tend to lose too much of it. Just try to stay balanced. You kind of know what you need. It's easier to keep track of, I think, than you get baseball. You get into the mindset of I just got Billy Hamilton. I'm good for steals now. And then you look at the rest of your team and you drafted 50 more steals, and now Hamilton only has 30 steals this year, and you wonder why you have a 4 in that category. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to those extremes in basketball because it's kind of obvious to you while you're doing it in some sense. But like with Rudy's War Room, it gave you targets. We don't necessarily know the targets we're looking for in basketball, which that's where it becomes a little tougher in my mind. Yeah.
Do you find there's also a case where each off season there becomes this whole host of trendy names, doesn't there? That through whatever medium, this year, we speak a lot about Jonathan Isaac, for example, Josh Richardson,
John Collins,
Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, etc., etc. I find one of the biggest mistakes that I see in drafts is that people tend to draft these sexy names without really fully understanding what the categorical strengths or deficiencies are.
Right.
So last year, take Aaron Gordon, for example. Aaron Gordon was a really trendy name. Probably a trendy name again this year, but you've got to understand that if you take Aaron Gordon, your field goal percentage and your free throw percentage is going to suffer. In the same way that if this year you take Jonathan Isaac, you understand that it is about the defensive stats and not you're not going to get you might get close to a 3 a game, but you're not going to get 15, 20 points a game or something like that.
You're getting like 8 or 9.
But you see a lot of roster constructions where you look, certain teams where they have this whole heap of really trendy picks without any real, or it doesn't seem very clear of any real understanding of what their deficiencies or strengths are. It's almost like, well, I'm going to get value here because I've been told he's a good player. This is a sleeper. This is a sleeper. And like same with like I always say with rookies. Know what it is, what never draft a rookie without knowing what, just on name value, know what the strengths and the deficiencies
I think really just never draft a rookie.
What's that?
Who are the main guys this year?
What, trendy wise, I think?
Yeah.
I think in terms of trendy, I see, I've heard a lot of Jonathan Isaac talk, a lot of Josh Richardson talk.
Jared Allen.
Yeah.
Well, John Collins.
Yeah, Collins.
I mean, the good thing with, especially Richardson, but even Isaac too. Like, I do think they fit most team builds, especially Richardson. Isaac, you're gonna be behind in field goal percentage for sure.
Isaac's a crapshoot this year. I mean, the potential's there, but he really is a crapshoot.
Oh yeah, he might.
He could be a total bust.
I disagree with that entirely, Brent, because I think the defensive floor is so high, and the weighted value of those defensive stats, I think that I don't find him a crapshoot at all. I think he's such a safe pick. If you can get him in the 80s, I think he's such a safe pick because he's going to get that value easily with blocks and steals, provided he's healthy.
What about Jordan Bell?
I just see a huge safety net, and the flexibility that can afford the rest of your roster is huge. So, I don't see it as a gamble at all. I think that it's a hugely safe pick because of the value of what he does contribute.
I worry a lot about low scoring guys.
The volume's so low on the percentages that it doesn't really matter. He's not going to be jacking up 15, 20 shots a game, and he's not going to be getting to the line a huge ton. So, the percentages look a lot worse than what the actual effect on the team is.
Yeah, and I've taken Isaac too. I mean, I get it. I'm just saying, I get nervous with guys like Jonathan Isaac, Jordan Bell, even like Nicholas Batum's. Even though I like them, just guys who don't score a lot of points, and you have to take them, before maybe the 8th or 9th round. That scares me a little.
Why does that make you nervous? Because surely in my mindset, a lot of the things that they do offer are way more valuable than the points anyway. Because the points and threes you can find anywhere. Blocks, steals, you can't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and in most cases, you're right. Like teams are taking superstars early on, so they're getting a lot of scoring from their early guys. So yeah, filling out a team with an Isaac or a Bell or a Draymond Green or things like that. I definitely see the value to it, and I love Bell this year. I like Isaac this year. It's something about it. Just when someone's averaging more around like 9 or 10 points a game, it just makes me nervous because with high, I think it's with high scoring guys. Even if they have an off night with their other stuff, you can still count on them to score usually. Where if these guys don't get a block or only get one block and they only score 8 points, I mean, they're not really living up to their value.
If you fill out a team of just high scorers and you try to draft a team focusing on points and it looks attractive, and again, I think it's another mistake that people make. You fall so far behind in the countings. It all becomes so hollow. Yes, it's fine at the top because they're at the top for a reason. They don't just score; they do a lot of other great things.
Yeah.
But you get to a point where there's a lot of guys that look a hell of a lot more attractive because they put up 17 points or 18 points a game or whatever. But everything else becomes so hollow that you fall so far behind in everything. So
let's look at with this, Jabari Parker versus like Jordan Bell. Where Parker you're going to get scoring, you're still going to get some boards, you're going to get some assists, you're going to get some other stuff. Yeah. And so would you rather have Parker or Bell later in a draft?
Well, again, it comes down to roster construction, doesn't
Yeah.
it? But my point is, if you go through your draft thinking, right, well, I'm going to take Jabari Parker because there's going to be 18 points or 17 points or whatever there, and ignore guys like Isaac and Bell or
Ibaka,
any of these guys, Jarrett Allen. There's so many of these guys, but you then get into this territory where it looks great because you've got all these, you've got these, you look at the box score the next day and you think, brilliant, 23 points, 17 points, 18 points. And then you look at everything else and it just, everything's just hollow.
Yeah. You got a team of McCollums and Klay Thompsons and stuff like that. Yeah, you're not going to be winning. That's for sure. Son, what are you looking at when you're constructing your roster? Do you look more for overall stuff? Are there particular categories you're looking at with guys later on that kind of give you a hint that they might produce?
I try to go balanced. I'm a balanced guy. But then, like I say, Bruce Lee, you got to flow with water, right? Like it's all league context, like what other guys are doing in the draft, what guys are available. And, I think, after the first 2 picks, your foundation is kind of set. And then from there, I think the 3rd or 4th round around that area, like the direction of your team will start, showing itself to you. And then you just have to, go that route. and just make that route, with the least amount of, I guess, take the path of least resistance, basically, right? But yeah, I mean, I try to go balance, and then I didn't. Then I just kind of react to the draft and to how my team is starting to shape up.
See, when I hear Son talking about that, I picture those karate movies where there's the old guy at the top of the mountain, with the gray beard, and you got to hike up, and you want the secret to everything, and he goes, "You must flow like water," and you're like, "Will you just tell me? Like, don't say something like that." Like,
yeah, I loved all that stuff. I loved all those movies. Wu-Tang, right? It's just Bruce Lee, all that stuff. I love all that stuff. It's great.
Well, I love talking basketball with you guys, playing devil's advocate, getting into it over guys. I mean, it just shows there's more than one way to skin a cat. Craig says it all the time. We all say it at some point or another. There's more than one way to build a great fantasy basketball team, but each season there's only a set amount of guys that are going to deliver. And I think what we do a good job here at Razzball, and what attracted me to Razzball, was that they're better than most at pointing out who those guys are going to be season after season. Nobody can be perfect. It's still, you're still guessing to some point, but it's a really educated guess. So if you're listening to this podcast, you're in the right place. Pay attention to the rankings from Sun, from Costas, from Craig. Read the articles. We have team previews coming out right now. So you can go team by team. That's a great way to fill out your roster. Any parting words from you guys? Will go around the horn real quick. We went a little longer than we thought, but any parting words for people who probably have drafts coming up here in the next week?
Just don't panic. Honestly, like, if you get a bit behind in a category, and like we just talked about extensively, just don't. If you can have your target, going in the draft, that's fine, but make sure you have a few different targets that fit different team builds and target the ones that fit what you need. Don't draft someone that doesn't fit what you're looking for at that point in the draft.
Good advice, Craig. Any parting words for people with draft this week?
I think know your league. If you're in a league with people that know their tendencies, know what the trade market is. It changes from league to league. But yeah, don't panic. Don't go in predetermined either. Don't go in thinking I'm going to punt turnovers or I'm going to pump through percentage. Take what you consider the best pairings, the best partnerships early on, see where the draft takes you, and understand where you're at to make your decision then.
It's funny that you say know your league, because in my league with Craig, he was drafting 11 and I was drafting 12. And it got to, I don't remember exactly what round, I want to say 7 or 8. And Jonathan Isaac was sitting there, and he was the top player on my board. And Craig was the only pick coming up before me. And I'm like, he's going to take Isaac. Isaac's going to be the top player on his board too. Bang, Isaac's gone. So I had to be prepared to pick back-to-back, because I was at the end of the draft. So I had to have, even though Isaac was the guy I wanted, and I knew my league. I knew Craig was going to take him, so I was already prepared with a couple backup picks. And I think did I even point that out in the chat, Craig? I was like, I knew you were going to grab him. But yeah, if you know who you're playing with, you can predict those things. Son, any parting words from the master on the mountain?
Yeah, flow like water. That's it.
There we go.
Hey guys, it's always a pleasure. That was fun. I mean, how long did we go there?
We're an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, that was good stuff though. I mean, there was a lot of good stuff in there. I guess Craig, Brent, and some of the new writers. I mean, they've been pumping out the team previews, which have been great. So. You guys go and check out all that stuff, and check out all the articles that we've been putting out. We've been pumping out a lot of content.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks to Sun for all the hard work he puts in on the rankings and getting these articles up constantly. I mean, really, you can get year-round content here. We'll get this up as a YouTube version. with videos and statistics and things like that, and it's only gonna get better and better here. So stay tuned. Follow us all on Twitter. I'm sure we'll link to all of us in the byline. So thanks guys for joining us, and here we are signing out.